Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Childs back here again. Hope you're doing really well on this Tuesday. We're going to be talking a lot in this episode of Let's Talk Chelsea about Raheem Sterling. Hashtag Boogate, all of the reaction to Sterling on Sunday, and I'll give you my thoughts, some things I've felt since my review of the Leicester game on Sunday and kind of moving it on from there. And then we will touch on, I think we should touch on it straight away. Eden Hazard back at Stamford Bridge. What a wonderful news story to wake up to on Tuesday morning in the UK. And I'm sure for wherever you were watching or listening to this, it was great to see. And I'm actually going to be attending the game. Only reason I'm going, well, there's actually two reasons. One of them is, of course, seeing Eden Hazard back at Stamford Bridge. Wonderful sight. Any chance to watch that player again at Stamford Bridge in the flesh is one you have to take up, which I'm lucky to do. The second is, of course, Frank Lampard. And it is quite funny that Frank will be in one dugout and Mauricio Pochettino will once again be in the other dugout. Curious to see what happens between now and the end of the season. I know it's going to be a very different crowd, but I suspect that because of Eden being at the game, it's going to be a majority, I suspect, Chelsea crowd, because there's going to be probably so much interest in just seeing Hazard back at Stamford Bridge. But that'll be curious on its own and to see how it all plays out over the summer when that game takes place. But all of the reaction I've seen and kind of a lot of the dominant narrative since Sunday has been about Raheem Sterling, and it's been about Chelsea fans, a section of Chelsea fans booing him during the game, and what the reaction internally has been to that, how other fans have reacted to that. As I say, the reaction to the reaction, which I think has been informative, and I do have my opinions on it, and I want to hear yours in the comments below. So Matt Law wrote this piece, kind of an inside piece around some of the player representatives, some of whom prefer to sit within the ground and within fans rather than just the posh seats, to kind of get a gauge on how fans are feeling. And there are comments within this piece from Matt Law that apparently this individual is quite surprised of how quickly some of the players have, have turned on the players and kind of the effect that has on footballers. Then Nazar Cancelo was reporting and sort of bringing up the point that Sterling has actually had a pretty good season in comparison when you look at how many goals he's scored. And of course, he has scored quite a few goals this season, 8 goals and 7 assists this season, the latest coming in the game against Leicester, which only puts him behind Nicholas Jackson and Cole Palmer. So then the question is, actually, when you look at the numbers, why does he have kind of this very divisive makes it sound like it's very conflicted between Sterling and it's kind of a civil war between Chelsea fans. I mean, I know about civil war within Chelsea fans over players. I don't think Sterling counts in this aspect. I think you're either very negative about Sterling or kind of quite frustrated about the situation. I mean, I haven't got the sense. I'm not saying there aren't people who are massive Sterling fans, which I would have counted myself as quite recently, but no, I don't think it constitutes that. But there definitely is an anger towards Sterling from some parts, and there is a deep frustration and maybe a sense that at times is he being, scapegoated. And, Nazar Cancelo's kind of headline was Sterling, he faces a test with the fans, but he's far from the biggest problem. I'm someone who has been inside the ground. I wasn't on Sunday, for clarity. I wasn't inside the ground, but I've been inside the ground in recent years at Chelsea where players have been booed. I don't like it. I don't like seeing our players get booed. I don't think it creates a nice atmosphere. I think it increases the level of toxicity and combativeness and confrontation. It separates, I think, and creates a distance between the fans and the players. I don't think it creates a nice environment where you feel like Chelsea are going to do good things together. I mean, that sounds very simple and kind of wishy-washy, but I just don't like it. So it takes a lot for me personally as a fan to boo a player. I think you have to literally be very disrespectful and combative to the fans. I think you have to openly show disrespect and contempt for the club. I think that's why there's a very limited, at least in my lifetime, section of players that when they have come back to the club, I have personally booed or not shown much support for. This season I've seen Mateo Kovacic return to the club. I've seen Kai Havertz return to the club. Mason Mount will return to Stamford Bridge in a couple of weeks' time. To me, none of those deserve animosity. because, I don't see kind of them completely stepping over the line. And that's with them moving to rival clubs. We're talking about players who've actually been at Chelsea at the time getting booed. You think about Jorginho getting sarcastically cheered and also booed by sections of the home crowd during the Sarri season. Romelu Lukaku, after that interview, that infamous interview, he got booed by sections of the crowd. I think it was the home game to Arsenal where Chelsea lost. Then, of course, Marco Correa was booed by sections of the crowd. There's even reports of earlier in the season, Nicholas Jackson was booed by segments of the crowd away at Wolves. And it's just, it's farcical when you think about the story of Nicholas Jackson this season. And that has not been a consistent thing. But because I've experienced that before, I could see I could tell what the tone of the mood would have been inside Stamford Bridge on Sunday, because I've seen it happen so many times. Now, I will condemn that. I don't support that. I don't think that's helpful to any player. I don't think that's helpful to the club. There's obviously been a lot of reaction to that. But I also don't think it's a binary situation where, because I oppose that booing, it means that all of the criticism aimed at Sterling is irrelevant, is unjustified, is hyperbolic, is just Chelsea fans flipping out and being unreasonable. And I think some of the stuff I've seen, some of the pieces I've seen, and I think it's very easy for people to kind of just throw out statements and kind of dismiss everything as PR, because you get a lot of that nowadays. But there quite clearly has been a sense from well-known prominent journalists and reporters, and also from the club themselves, to kind of give another side of the story. In some ways, I understand it from the club. I don't think they're that consistent, because I haven't always felt that, I don't want to use the phrase that gets brought up with this, but I haven't seen the same consistency applied to other situations. It is kind of my retort to that. But it doesn't surprise me the club would want to put out positive things about the players that play for them. I mean, that's to expect the club to go hard on Raheem Sterling. I think, you're living in a fantasy world, right? I don't expect that from the club. But there is absolutely a tone of kind of, what happened on Sunday was abnormal. What happened on Sunday was disgusting, disgraceful, something that, really was on the fans. And I think, as I say, booing isn't something I support, of course. However, the criticism, the frustration of Raheem Sterling over this season, for someone who's very well paid, is one of I think the most well-played player in this current squad, and also someone who's been given a lot of opportunity and hasn't performed to a high enough level, in my opinion, in recent weeks. You can still have that criticism. It doesn't, you don't have to be a blind propagandist or someone who's just abusing and booing the players all the time. I mean, the fact that we have to live in this kind of very binary world is just consistently annoying to me. And I do question my own analysis, right? Am I too harsh on the players? Am I too harsh about negativity surrounding the club this season? Am I being unfair? Now, I like to analyse that. I like to look at both sides of an argument. I think I am quite fair. I do look at both sides of an argument, but I'm also going to give you my honest take on things. Sometimes my honest take on things you may not like, but that's my honest take. And I like to think that's why people enjoy listening or watching my content, right? Is because, I'm never going to sit here and tell you something I don't believe, because I think it maybe will gain me some favour with whatever section of the mob there is at the current time. But I think with Sterling, it's a very difficult situation. And I'd like to think that from Pochettino's side, and where he comes into this equation for me, is a sense of leadership and direction, right? And maybe him not being aggressive enough, or I think commanding enough of a leader to really interact with fans and communicate with fans in a way that gets them on board. I've said this quite consistently, is I don't think he's done enough to endear himself with Chelsea fans. And this is not just people who had the blinkers on from the first moment he arrived and were never going to take to him because of his Spurs connections. We look through history. Jose Mourinho went to Spurs. Antonio Conte went to Spurs. The idea that is a completely irredeemable line that means that he could have never been liked by Chelsea fans. It's not a Benitez situation where Benitez said things about Chelsea before he arrived that really annoyed Chelsea fans. It was very unpopular. That wasn't the sense I got when Mauricio Pochettino was appointed. But there is also a factor of him taking responsibility and maybe wanting to communicate with Chelsea fans and going to celebrate them with a lot more, going to celebrate with them a lot more when big things happen within games. I don't think he's done everything within his power. And with the penalty situation, why isn't there a designated penalty taker? And it should be Cole Palmer, our best player. In the sense of Raheem Sterling, why is he continuing to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity where he's put in some really bad displays that have cost the team? And I've seen it with Thiago Silva, the way he's managed that situation. I think he needs to do similar with Raheem Sterling. And I think part of it comes down to leadership. But then also in the case of Sterling, I think that he hasn't been putting his best foot forward this season. I don't think at times he's always looked to me to put everything out there for the shirt. The times I've watched him fail to track a runner and Chelsea find themselves exposed defensively on the left side doesn't show me a player leading the team as an experienced veteran. I don't get that from Sterling, unfortunately. Now, he apparently wants to stay and fight. He wants to stay and prove people wrong. He's been doing that for a lot of his career. I'm not entirely shocked that that's Sterling's approach, but I do come to the conclusion now, right? I kind of think it might be the best time for him to move on from Chelsea, primarily because if he's not, that output, I don't want to completely demean that output and say that what he's done this season, like he set up Cole Palmer's goal on Sunday, is irrelevant, because we don't round here deny reality and deny actual evidence in front of us that a player has done something objectively well. I'm never going to sit here and tell you, even if I've criticised the player very harshly for some bad performances, if they have one good performance where they put in a good display and they help Chelsea win a game, I'm always going to praise that player. I'm not going to act like that did not happen, because I just think it makes my credibility go down massively. I don't understand the blind kind of either positivity or slander against a player, negativity, because you've gone so far down the line you can never admit they've done something good or never admit they've had a bad performance. That's not what we do around here, and I like to think that people who watch my show feel the same way, right? But I think it's fair that you want to always be positive as you can with players, because I want Chelsea players to succeed. I want to be sat here talking about Chelsea players being the best players. But Sterling had an objectively bad display on Sunday, and I don't think it helps discourse to try and mask that with all of the stuff on Sunday was irresponsible by fans, and Chelsea fans need to be demeaned and kind of sneered at, and Chelsea fans, what were they thinking? And it was only sections, and to be honest, when Raheem Sterling was eventually taken off, there were segments, I think a large portion of the crowd that were clapping him. It wasn't all just like resounding boos, and that is something that needs to come into the effect as well, and come into the conversation. Is I think sometimes maybe a vocal minority makes it seem like they speak for the majority when that isn't always the case. Now, I think there are a lot of Chelsea fans who are at the very least frustrated with Sterling's performances and maybe would like to see Mykhailo Mudryk get a few more starts onto Pochettino. And given what Sterling has done in his career, given the heights he has reached in his career, I don't think it's unfair for fans to expect him to put in a much bigger performance. When you take the ball away from our best player this season and you put in such a woeful effort from the spot, I'm sorry, just because I haven't played the game, I'm a fan. I'm someone who pays my money to go and watch Chelsea. And like any fan across the world who loyally supports this team, you have a right to criticise and to give your honest views. I don't think that should stray into abuse. I don't think that should stray into completely going after the players day after day, abusing them online. Of course, I always condemn that. I'm always going to oppose that. But fair criticism is what we should be allowed to do, right? And it's this kind of, again, either we have to be so nihilistic and negative about everything, or we have to be blind positivity and optimism all the time. Both sides are unhealthy. It's about having balance, and I think Sterling himself needs to improve his performances. Hopefully, post the international break, we can move on from this and Chelsea can have a positive end to the season under Pochettino, and hopefully Sterling can be a part of that. That's what we all want, right? We all want to see Chelsea succeed. So I think with all of this, right, I don't think the reaction to it, especially from mainstream outlets, has really helped the situation. I think it's kind of even anger people who maybe didn't like the booing in the first place, because it looks a little bit too, orchestrated. And I'm not saying from a conspiracy theory point of view. It looks to me like we've had a lot of briefing over the past couple of days that has tried to, paint Sterling as a massive victim within this, and I don't think it quite tells the whole story of what led to that moment on Sunday. It's not like that moment came out of absolutely nowhere. I don't think it did. You have to, if you speak to Chelsea fans, if you've watched Chelsea so far this season, that frustration with Sterling of making bad decisions when he's been given opportunities inside the box, when he should have passed to a teammate several times, performances that have felt very lackluster, very wayward for a player who should be doing a lot better in what is an immature team. I think that's where that frustration leads. I don't think it is justifiable to lead to booing, but that was some people's decisions. They paid their money. That's what they're going to do. I don't like that. I don't think it helps the environment, but at the same time, to act like it was just some kind of freakish anomaly on a player who's been wonderful this season is just not telling the whole story, unfortunately. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.